eat it yet. Wouldn't be prudent.
Yes.
But I don't know. Yeah, I would have to say any kind of meat. I mean,
Hmm.
eating meat. So, I would be eliminating something out of my own diet, but that would be all right. I mean, I've had arguments with people that say, "Oh no, you can't live without meat." Really? How about millions of people who live in what's now the most populous country in the world don't eat meat, and they're fine.
Yeah, I feel strongly about this too, because a lot of people I've talked about like substitutes, and there's so many good plant-based options. So it would be our planet would be kind of more sustainable with if we eliminate that. So that was a great answer. Thanks for joining us, Carolina. Nice to have you here. We're just doing an icebreaker. If you had anything on top of your mind, feel free to let us know. Um, and thank you, Kinsey, for letting us know you're driving. And thanks for listening in. Um, I'm trying to think if I have a food item that I'd like to eliminate. I hate peas. And I feel really strongly about this. I really hate peas. And I can't eat it in anything. Like if it's rice, I'll take it out. If it's like a curry or anything that's made with peas. This one time I saw like these cutlets. They were really good, like kind of like patties, and they tasted really good. And I asked someone what was in it, and they said it's entirely made of peas. And I was kind of surprised that it tasted good. But anyways, I don't like peas at all. So I would love to destroy that item. All right. Um,
One other item: lima beans.
okay. Nice. Nice.
I don't mind peas if they're like fresh from the pod, but if it's like the frozen one, then I don't like it. It's
Hmm.
like, you peel it and you remove it yourself, then I'm okay.
Okay. That's
But if it,
interesting. Yeah, my
yeah,
mom used to do that, and then we realized it was so much work, and then we started
it's so
getting,
much work. Yeah, it's
yeah, and
fun.
we started getting frozen ones. But anyways, um, all right. Thank you everyone for participating. This was a lot of fun to know about your preferences and potentially help us plan a potluck if we want that in the future in this group. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our amazing speaker for today, Urugaya. He's been with us before, so if you've been to one of the talks he's given, you know this one's going to be really good. He's from Australia, and he's been cooking and distributing sanctified vegetarian food, and mantra meditation is one of his passions. And now he and his wife split their time between India and traveling the rest of the world, just sharing bhakti yoga so selflessly. And one of the services is coming onto this group in Seattle, and giving us some wisdom to share. So thank you, Uriah, for being here. We're so excited for your talk. Are you currently calling in from India, Mayapur,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, right. That's sweet. So it's very early in the morning for you, right?
It's 6:40 in the morning.
Okay, okay.
For some reason, I thought you guys were in Washington. I don't know why. And then I was like checking the time. It's like so late. I was like, wow, you guys meet so late. But now I learned that you're in Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but yeah, nice to
Yeah,
see.
it's confusing because there's Washington, D.C., which is the capital, so they're 3 hours ahead. We're
Yeah.
in Washington State, which
Yeah.
is also Washington, I guess. But yeah, they named us the same thing.
But is Washington, D.C. in Washington State?
No, no.
No, that's why it doesn't make any sense. It's like
Oh,
entirely the other side of the country.
um,
Right. Over to you, Urga. You can start it.
Oh, now you guys have just disappeared. I think the power just went off, but I have you on a backup, which is okay. Just give me 1 sec. I'll slide
Yeah,
you across.
sure.
Um, anyway, I'm not able to see you guys right now because I have a monitor here and it's just gone off with the power, but I have my laptop. Anyway, whatever. You'll come back in a minute. If I
Yes.
disappear, it's because the power went off.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, nice to see you all. Nice to be back. Graham is a familiar face. Nice to see you again. Um, yeah, basically today I'm actually working on a small presentation that I want to like present as part of another online project that we do. And I haven't, like, I've been working on it for some time in terms of just like, researching and putting energy, but I've never like presented it, and neither is it in a present worthy state. But just because I figured let me like run this like the overview or like the dot points as a presentation for you guys, and then I can also just like feel it out, see what works, see what doesn't work, and get some feedback from you guys at the end or whatever throughout, doesn't matter. So this presentation is called well, it's based on five sacred rituals from the Bhakti tradition, and we called it like the 5 sacred rituals to rewire your mind and reawaken your spirit. And it's basically, ancient Bhakti tools for the modern seeker. And these are 5 principles that come from what's called Panch Anga Bhakti. And Panch literally means 5. Anga, I mean, Sanskrit's a interesting language where you can kind of translate it in different ways, but Anga means like a limb, or like you like a limb, like my arm is a limb, or like the branch of a tree or whatever. And Bhakti, loving devotional service, but it just means like the 5 practices for spiritual growth. And like obviously for those who are familiar, the Bhakti tradition is like there's a lot of information, there's a lot of different angas, a lot of different limbs or like different, not paths because they're all interconnected, different branches on the one tree is still one tree, but there's different ways to connect to divinity through the Bhakti tradition. And this kind of first like fundamental principle of bhakti, known as sadhana bhakti, is actually using like your senses. We have like our material body, bhakti tradition. The first lesson of the bhakti tradition is like actually this body that you have is temporary, but you as a spiritual spark or spark of consciousness actually exists above or beyond the body. And when this body is finished, you actually change bodies based on your consciousness. So you're not the body, you're actually a spiritual being. That's kind of like the foundation of bhakti. And then what we do is we use our senses, we use our material body, like focus that at divinity as a way to kind of elevate and expand our consciousness. So Panch Anga Bhakti is kind of, if you boil down, you know, the teachings of Bhakti into 5 main teachings. And I guess like consciously or unconsciously, these this Panchanga Bhakti I've been practicing for some years, or even as a principle since the beginning of my bhakti, but I never, like, until the last few years, really like made an effort to kind of incorporate it into like my daily ritual or a part of my spiritual practice. And I think it can be a nice meditation to take these like 5 principles and then, kind of keep note or like keep it in your consciousness and then try to implement it in your daily life or just your life overall as a principle. Um, and I do find them very relevant and helpful, and especially in a world that is like, fast paced or like full of anxiety or like we're feeling disconnected or there's a lot of like impersonalism, kind of like you mind your business, I mind my business, we're all kind of struggling to survive here, kind of thing. So I hope that you find it helpful and beneficial. Um, so the 5 sacred rituals or the Panch Anga Bhakti is Dambas, so I'll give the overview. Dambas, a Sanskrit word, which basically means like creating your own sacred space or going to a space that's already sacred, which may not be practical all the time, but essentially like situating yourself in a sacred space. And Dambas, the first. And they're not necessarily in any particular order. And then the next principle is Sankirtan, is also a Sanskrit word. San comes from the Sanskrit root samya, which means like together, and kirtan means to vibrate, like sacred sounds. So Sankirtan is a principle, really means like coming together, like congregationally, and like vibrating transcendental sounds as a method to elevate consciousness. So that kind of manifests as well, kind of in our day-to-day life, like practically, of course, there is the practice of kirtan, especially in the traditional sense, like with instruments and chanting mantras, especially Vedic mantras, or in this age, and especially in my personal spiritual practice, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra has been a huge part of it. But it also means, as a principle, like sound as a medicine or sound healing, but also just meditation in general, doing pranayam and meditation, and this as a medicine, like to calm the mind and calm the consciousness and expand the consciousness. And then we're able to kind of enter into more flow states, like feeling connected to the world around us, to the people around us, seeing how the things that happen to us are actually lessons and opportunities for us to grow and evolve. So that's all coming under the principle of Sankirtan, not just vibrating sounds, but even like yoga and meditation, like, coming into like an inner space, like this, which leads into the third anga, which is sattva. So some of you may be familiar, some of you may be aware of sattva, like in the yoga tradition, the Vedic tradition, we're having like the three modes of material nature. So like you can say material energy is goodness, sattva, rajas, passion, and tamas, ignorance. So I don't mean to like information overload you, but this is basically like a practical way to understand how, when we interact with not just, the world, but people or places or foods, they have different modes of the material energy, which means like, even subtly or vibrationally, or even just, just by being there very grossly, your consciousness, even your body gets affected, which obviously your consciousness and your body are interconnected. But the principle of sattva is it means being in the mode of goodness, which works like having a very healthy life, like the food that you eat, the habits that you do, your addictions or your vices or your, distractions or your recreations, how it affects your consciousness. And it's really trying to create like a positive, like vibration, or like, a life full of blessings and flow, and being like, and in an expanded state of consciousness, we're actually able to, you know, take advantage of, I would say, like, the human form of life, in the sense that this human form of life is an opportunity really to expand consciousness, elevate consciousness, and experience like a reality that's not just confined within the body, but is, interconnected with all things. So sattva is really about like resetting your lifestyle into a mode of goodness, good foods, good people, nice places, good energy, and that will actually like help you in your consciousness. And part of that is interconnected into the fourth anga or limb of bhakti, which I've called as wisdom, which basically means feeding the mind, taking advantage of people who have realizations or have walked on the spiritual path, and, have some significant wisdom to share with us, or some message, or even just taking information that's helpful to us. Like now we live in the digital age, there's so much information available that we can take advantage of. Like it may be, unique to our particular time, place, and circumstance. It may be unique to our particular culture, which, means, particular religion or particular situation. Or, now we have like so much access to information, means we can tap into wisdom from other traditions. Like even my journey, I ended up coming to India, and living in India. It's been 6 years now. I'm living here. Completely different culture to where I'm from. But at the same time, that was a decision for making my spiritual life my priority, because in the place where I live, there's a very ancient culture of spiritual life, and then you can take advantage of that. And like same with the previous point about being in the mode of goodness, like same here, like the energy of the place is uplifting, which also connects to the first point about Dham Bas. But yeah, the fourth Anga is about wisdom, which means like, feeding your mind, elevating substance, reading like the Bhagavad Gita or other wisdom texts that, have such a profound knowledge that if you kind of take the time to try to connect and absorb or even analyze, then all of a sudden, like it's giving you some tools on how to deal with the world and how to like, in every moment live in like an expanded state of consciousness. Which leads to the next point, the last point, and of course they're all interconnected and they feed each other, but it's called sadhu sangha, which is another Sanskrit word. Sadhu means, the sadhus are the saints really, and sangha means association. So this kind of feeds into, finding your tribe, community, and healing through community. Being connected, feeling supported, but with like-minded people who have a similar mood, who don't want to exploit you, don't want to like take advantage of you, but simply like care about you, especially on the existential level, and they want to see you kind of expand in your, we all have a potential to be kind of very enlightened beings. So this sadhu sangha is about placing yourself in the association of people who want to kind of feed and nourish that aspect of your life. So that's the overview of the Panch Anga. And I'm going to go straight into it, unless anybody wanna stop. So, okay, the first point we spoke about was Dham Bas. So Dham literally means like a holy place, and Bas means to reside. So to reside in a holy place. Because your environment, it actually shapes your consciousness. And traditionally, like, I'm practicing Bhakti tradition now more than a decade. And the way that this principle manifests in this tradition was like coming and living in a holy place. So throughout the world, especially in India, there's different localities that are considered to be like very spiritual, different traditions or even the same traditions. People who are practicing that, they go and reside in this place because they find um, association, the sadhus, they find inspiration. There's like historical significance. There's particular temples or churches, mosques, whatever. There's different holy places with significance that are inspiring for the individual. That kind of encourage one to practice deeply. Like you feel connected to the place, it makes you focus more, especially me being here in India, in this place, Mayapur. There's such a rich tradition in this place that sometimes it's so easy, like especially in a meditation or doing the chanting, just to feel absorbed being in the place. So the take-home message is all of you should, quit your jobs, leave your homes, leave your everything and fly to India. No, that's not the idea. The idea is like it's taught also in the Bhakti tradition. Like if you can't actually go physically to these holy places, you should just make this holy place manifest where you are. And I have this experience like when I travel, when I visit different communities, like so, as soon as I leave my home, because it's a very special place, Mayapur, energetically, it's very, very wonderful, and it's kind of a magic place. And as soon as I leave, I'm always like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I not here? Like, why did I leave my home? Why did I leave this place? And then like, you go to London or you go to Sydney or like, I mean, I do like these places, but just the intensity of life is so different. The pace. Australia's a little bit different. The people are very friendly in Australia. Um, People are in a good mood. generally. It's close, the beach is there, and most people are pretty healthy, and it's quite an enjoying culture. Like, okay, I want to enjoy, you want to enjoy, I have my space, you have your space. Let's not disturb each other. Let's coexist for the sake of enjoyment. But then I guess some of the colder countries, the people are a little bit more nasty. Like, we were in London recently, and I was kind of first couple of days just completely overwhelmed by just the intensity of life, the kind of grind. Um, but when I was like staying with friends who are spiritual practitioners, or when I was living in the temple, I didn't feel separation from Mayapur. I didn't feel separation from the Dham, the holy place where I live, because I could see how these people or these communities have been able to recreate that energy there, um, in London or in Sydney, or I haven't been in America for years, but so the modern take, or the practical take, is creating a sacred space in your home, which means like even in my apartment here in Maipo, I have within this dham, within this holy space, I also have my own sacred space, and I have like the books that I like, the pictures that I like, I have my little, like crystals and things that kind of inspire me and trigger my consciousness. And there's other things, you can put candles, you can like calming visuals, or like, remove screens. Okay, like I'm guilty because my sacred space is also like my office. Um, but the idea, the message for you to take home is, you in your home, in your space, you need to have like your own sacred space. And, part of this presentation, I'm doing some research to give you, the audience, like statistics, like scientific statistics on how, living in a messy place, and also leads to this point of living in the mode of goodness. Like, how living in a messy place, or like not having a sacred space, it can affect the consciousness, even in terms of like chemicals in the brain. Like, there's this cortisol, which is related to stress. So being like if you live in trashy place, or not like nice sattvic space, it actually creates stress in your life. So the idea is, for you to have a space where you can kind of retreat from the world. And this is an opportunity where you won't get disturbed, you feel inspired, you feel good, it's clean, it's like elevating consciousness, and you can go there and you can do your meditation, you can have your, connection to divinity, you can do your spiritual practice, or the things that you want to do, whatever it is, yoga, meditation, chanting, or depends on what your desires and your goals are. But the idea is like, okay, you cannot just like pack up your life and go to, some holy place. It's not practical. So with that principle, and in Sanskrit also, like, it's called Manasa Vrindavan. Like, Manasa means the mind. Like, with your consciousness, you bring that spiritual energy, that divinity there to your space. And then if you have like a space kitted out, like this is your sacred space, you can kind of build on the energy. You can keep like entering back into this space and keep entering, like, build on it. And then every time you come, it's like, oh yeah, this is my space. This is for me. This is for my consciousness. And then you can really kind of focus on expanding consciousness and going deeper within the self. Um, so I guess just, while I'm jumping to the next point, you can just take 10 seconds just to think about, your home. Maybe many of you already have like a home altar, or like a little sacred space, like a little temple room or something. But you can take a moment just to think like how you can create that space, how you can, through using your senses, like the first thing of bhakti, using your senses to connect to the divinity. We have this body, we have to work with it. So how you can use this body to create a sacred space, maybe add something, something calming, or candles, or like, whatever it is, try to create a sacred space in your home. And there's a little quote that we have, that like, your home can become your temple and your breath can become your pilgrimage. So just to hone in on that point about how, like, yeah, you don't need to jump on a plane and go anywhere, or drive, or whatever. You can actually create where you are right now. And it's easier if, you kind of delegate a space. You can create this dham in your home, or just where you are. You can carry the dham with you. It's actually a state of consciousness. And I'll finish on this point, like, one of our teachers, Srila Prabhupada, he always said, you cannot buy a ticket to the Dham. You cannot just pay money and fly to the Dham. It's actually a state of consciousness. So yeah, it's a little meditation for you guys. The next point is about Sankirtan, or we call it the mantra healing ritual. And there's a little quote, what you repeat, you become. So traditionally, Sankirtan is done through japa, which is, kind of privately, silently, or very quietly, or loudly, whatever you want. But the repetition of mantra, and then congregationally in the form of kirtan or sankirtan, which means like, doing things alone is very difficult, actually. To inspire yourself and motivate yourself when you're the only one, it's not so easy. I mean, practically, I experience this all the time, and I'm sure you can relate. So therefore, the Sankirtan principle is about coming together and collectively, like, putting your energy together. They have this saying, you have like one stick, it's like easy to break, but if you have like a bunch of sticks, it's hard. So Sankirtan is similarly, it's like coming together and combining your energies, especially if it's done with like-minded people, like your kind of tribe. We were talking about sadhu sangha, you're kind of your tribe, your people, you feel connected, you don't feel people they want anything from you. You're just there with like kind of pure intentions collectively. And from that collective space, it can be a very tangible experience to connect to divinity. So I'm sure in Seattle, you have kirtan sanghas, you have groups of kirtan coming together, which, good to take advantage if you've never done it before. And, maybe everyone has different tastes, so maybe you'll go for a kirtan and it didn't inspire you. And so maybe you need to, find a slightly different way of doing it, or less traditional or more traditional, or with, you need to, you have an individuality, you have to work with it. So even though this second anga is Sankirtan, which literally means like coming together and chanting and vibrating mantras, I don't want to diminish the importance of doing other practices in relationship to meditation. So, so many years ago, 15 years ago, my entrance into spiritual life was also through meditation. My first meditation experience was with mantra. It was a Aramaic, like Christian mantra, like call to Christ. Not that I was religious at all. I was just open-minded. But it was done silently, and then from that I also started doing meditation, focusing on the breath. But then when I came in touch with like the Bhakti tradition, especially the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, I actually kind of neglected my the silent meditation. I did start doing yoga, and I still do yoga, although it's not like my main inspiration. I do it, it's more for my body. But the only reason I bring it up is because recently, like in the last few weeks, by chance, I started incorporating pranayam, breathing, pranayam, and also silent meditation and a few other like breathing exercises into my daily practice. And I found it extremely helpful. And I was like, damn, so many years I didn't do it. And the reason I didn't do it is because like japa, sitting and silently meditating or doing breath work is a little bit hard. It's very sattvic. It's very mode of goodness. It's very, like, mind gets so agitated, especially for me, like, I'm very passionate, Rajagun, very passion, want to build, want to create, want to, make stuff, move things, take this thing, put it there, very external. And my strategy for many years has been like, okay, I understand this is how I am. This is my material energy. Oh, one sec, I'm getting a thing that I should charge my laptop. Oh, ooh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so my strategy was just to work with it. Like, okay, I'm passion, so I'm just gonna flow with passion. But the problem is passion and then usually crash into ignorance. Means you do a lot of work, you do this, do that, you know. We were saying like my service here in Mayapur, we have a kitchen, an outdoor kitchen where we cook and we go in the villages and we give out free meals. And, you know, the cooking is also meditation, try to put good energy in the food, like try not to cut corners, put good ingredients because it's like a sacrifice or an offering to divinity. You know, it's like, you know, we're also trying to put our love and good energy. So when people eat it, it's not just filling the belly, it's also giving them like energy and kind of the idea is, you know, expand your consciousness and their consciousness in this like synergy. But it's very, you know, we cook from anywhere between like 400 to the biggest we did was almost 3,000 plates. Just this week we did that. But it's very big, you know, wood fire and big and heavy and dangerous because I like this. It's my nature. Um, and therefore I neglected the meditation aspect because it's too difficult. Whereas with japa, like with chanting, you know, the mantra I'm chanting the most, although there's many mantras, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because I found it the most effective and powerful. It's kind of more easy. Like we're talking about using your senses and your body to connect to the divinity. Like when you chant, you know, I have my beads, you have, you know, you feel them, you're holding something, your touch is engaged, your tongue is vibrating, your ears, you're hearing, you know. It's easier. You can even walk and chant. You can whatever, go for a walk. You can sit. You can stand. It's whereas with the silent meditation, it's very difficult. But these days I started doing it again out of necessity because I'm sick of being in the mode of passion and I'm trying to elevate my consciousness to the mode of goodness. And I found it very helpful for my chanting. Like if I do pranayam, to calm my mind and then like sit in the meditation. In the beginning, it was very difficult. Um, but after some time, I start to get a taste for it and I'm able to see how it affects my day-to-day life. Means I'm slower, like more conscious, more connected, less like aggressive. And then also, you know, if I sit and chant, because chanting is the main anga of bhakti that I focus on along with my study. Um, I can actually sit and chant without getting agitated. Before I would have to always walk or like, you know, to kind of catch the mind. Now I'm feeling like much more connected. Mind is more calm. So even though the principle is Sankirtan, I think, well, my experiences demonstrated that we can also take advantage of, you know, other angas or like I would say this principle of meditation and japa and kirtan, they all kind of have a synergy with each other and we can take advantage of all of them. Um, and there's plenty of science around this meditation and japa chanting and these kinds of things, like how it affects the brain waves or how it can like be used to release trauma and these kinds of things. So I assume, you know, most of the people here doing some kind of spiritual practice, some chanting or some things like this. And this is very much essential. You know, if we're not doing, then you know what we're doing, not being in mode of goodness and not really expanding consciousness. Like, of course, there's other ways, there's other angas to connect. Meditation, chanting, it's not the only way to do it. But definitely, you know, at least from the Bhakti tradition, this Panchanga Bhakti, this Sankirtan principle is there very specifically mentioned. And for this age that we live in, doing this kind of yoga meditation, chanting, it's very helpful. We should definitely take advantage of it. And they kind of feed each other. And especially for me, when I'm doing the meditation and doing the chanting, it's just, you know, revolutionizing my consciousness. Like when I make it a priority, it's just I can see in my day-to-day life how just more conscious, feeling more connected, you know, seeing maybe you can even say like seeing synchronicities that I may not even notice before, where like everything becomes kind of like a lesson or an opportunity to grow. Um, so this I would hone in as one of the most important points of the presentation, that you know, we come to our sacred space, we do our meditation, some chanting, like expand consciousness. Um, and yeah, we should take full advantage of these tools that have been given to us. And it leads into the next point about being in the mode of goodness, sattva gun. And of course, they're all connected, they all feed each other, but it's what I've termed the lifestyle reset ritual. So being in the mode of goodness, like traditionally in bhakti, we have like an altar at home. You have like different pictures or like things that are inspiring that we like, kind of like a temple in the house. And we offering all of our food, like everything we cook, everything we eat. You first like doing it almost like a meditation as an offering. Presenting it like, saying some prayers, putting like good energy into the food like this. This is very much being in the mode of goodness. It's also, being very clean. Sattva means very clean, making sure your body is clean, making sure your house is clean. Like I was saying before, like this, I was reading an article about how like just having clutter in the house makes you stressed. And it's funny, I was reading this article and then I remember like going into my place and being like, damn, should clean up a little bit. But generally, as a principle, having like clean food means, like good vibrational food, obviously like organic is the best, or food that you've grown yourself. Like here in Mayapur where we live, everything is rural. I wish I can show you outside. It's so pretty. It's just like food growing everywhere. Now it's rainy season, it's monsoon, everything's a bit flooded, but there's still a lot of crops. And we also, as part of our project, our food distribution project, we also growing food. And the idea is like striving towards self-sufficiency means like, if these systems shut down, that we're not going to die. We have access to food. We're growing our own food, organic food, which then we're using in the cooking and giving to the community. So this is very nice. And it's also one of the reasons why Mayapur is such a special place is because the people live very similar way. Like here, by material standards, people are very poor, but they also live very good lives. Like if I took you here, if you came and visited and I took you to some of the locals' houses, like from the outside, you'd be like, whoa, like people live here. It's like, metal shack, dirt paths, a little bit like overwhelming. But then if you go inside, it's like so clean, everything like super clean, like beautiful pictures. And like they also have their little altar and sacred space. I mean, depending what religion they follow or whatever. But it's very clean and they're taking water from the ground, they're bathing in the river, washing their clothes, they're growing vegetables here and then like they're growing this and then the neighbor's growing that and then they switch. So this is also like a very sattvic lifestyle in the sense like sometimes I imagine if there's some like zombie apocalypse or whatever and the world ends, like actually here the people won't be affected that much, at least not to start off with, because already they're living very much in harmony with nature. Okay, electricity will go off, so no more TV, no more cell phones. But in terms of like survival or just living, they're already doing they're already living like this, living in harmony with nature, more or less, growing food everywhere, taking water from the earth like this. So mode of goodness is such a principle, and obviously there's a lot to be said about being in the mode of goodness, but it means, rising early, doing spiritual practices, living clean, like having sattvic food. So obviously, at the beginning we had this icebreaker, what food would you want to remove? And Graham was saying, meat eating is not so good, or he would remove that. And I was very much in agreement, although I didn't bring it up. And yeah, like obviously, if you take a broccoli from the ground, you're killing it. You do, you kill it. Cauliflower, you kill it. You're murdering this little tree, you can't get around it. Of course, if you take an apple from the tree doesn't die. Actually, the tree is happy. But carrots, potatoes, broccoli, cauliflower, all these things, you have to kill them. And this is the crazy thing about being in this material world, jiva jivasya jivanam. There's a Vedic aphorism that's saying like, unfortunately in this world, one life's life is another life's life. Like living beings survive on the death of another living being. And that's like one of the horrible things about being in the material world. But civilized human beings should be able to, from our subjective experience, like understand the difference between like killing, a broccoli and killing like a goat or a pig or a cow or a chicken. It's a very different experience. So I'm not sitting here and telling you like what you should and shouldn't eat. You have free will, you do whatever you want. Although I'm very much against like industrialized, um, slaughterhouses. Like if you had to go and catch your own chicken or hunt your own deer, probably a lot more people would be vegetarian, you know what I mean? But at least you should be conscious, like energetically, what you're doing, because yes, okay, when you kill broccoli, it dies, but it's a very different experience. You can imagine if you go with your kids and your family and you go in the garden and you harvest, like, just before the rainy season, for 3 months, I was learning. I had a nice piece of land my friend owns growing vegetables, and I had to learn how to do it, and it was such a nice meditation. Like literally I'd go like 6 in the morning for like 2, 3 hours. And I was just like in the garden, in the dirt, feet in the dirt, like being in this calm, like a holy place, like feeling connected, like, feeling like just in this magical, like natural environment. And then, weeding, every every time you're like killing this grass. Sometimes I was feeling bad, all these weeds, you're like killing them, but you have to do it to protect your crop. And actually, you feel good afterwards. You come out of the garden like, damn, wow, my conscience was so like calm, just calm, like sattva, just being in the dirt. And boy, you can imagine like going with your family and your kids, and there's like, a big cow, and you go and like cut its throat and blood, and then you have to take off the skin and harvest this stuff and remove the like it's a completely different experience. And also like how much suffering is there. Anyway, the point is like eating meat is not in the mode of goodness, and like, okay, there's no disqualifications for bhakti, means someone can eat meat and still have like spiritual realizations and go forward in the spiritual life. But one thing that always puzzles me, because, I'm kind of trying sincerely to practice this particular path of bhakti, is like, I don't understand how people cannot see the connection between like what's on their plate and what's in the environment. There's like people fighting with their family, fighting with their neighbors, fighting with the next suburb, so much war, so much destruction or whatever. And people don't see the connection. Like you're creating so much suffering on your plate. You cannot understand energetically how that vibration permeates into the way that you treat other people. I don't know, maybe I'm just a fanatic, but it seems like a very clear correlation in my mind between like what you're putting on the plate and how you're treating the other people. If you can't understand like how you're causing so much suffering just for your tongue and your belly, but then you can't understand why, like, your neighbors, you're fighting with your neighbor. It's like, your consciousness is very contracted. You should make an effort to expand your consciousness and see the connection between like what you eat and what's happening in your life. So anyway, sattva is the principle, being in goodness, being kind, calm, clean, merciful, truthful, austerities, rising before the sun if possible, or with the sun, rising early, giving charity, like sacrifice, these kinds of things is all, I mean, generally considered to be in the mode of goodness. And of course, the devil's in the details. And yeah, so eating clean, having mindful routines, reducing negative, influences. And one thing that I really like, that I've been trying to do the last few months, is like a principle of gratitude. So trying to be this principle of gratitude, like me and my wife were doing this thing before we go to bed, like what's 3 things that we're grateful for? And being grateful is good because sometimes the world is a dark place. Actually, it is a dark place. Um, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, but when you practice gratitude and you can kind of see that actually your life's all right, even it's good or even it's really good. But also I found that this principle of gratitude, it manifests a lot of abundance in life. So, being grateful for simple things or whatever, like all of a sudden, then you notice more things that you're grateful for. Um, and yeah, it's kind of like, uh, how to say, a lot of positive things start to manifest. At least I experience, just being grateful and practicing gratitude. And then I have a friend in Australia, also have, some difficulties in his life and some traumas and things. And then we started doing this thing where every day we send each other like, what's um one good thing that we did today? And it can be anything, like helping some lady cross the street, or like, I cleaned my mom's whatever, or like anything, just one good thing. And then we would sending each other every day just to like try to be like more goodness, manifest goodness. And also, digital age, we have so many distractions. So I read a stat, someone on average checks their phone 96 times a day. And I was thinking 96, I reckon I'm at least double that because I work through my phone. I'm always on my phone and WhatsApp and this and that. But the reason I bring it up is like, because, spending too much time on technology, there's stats. I was reading an article about increases anxiety and disturbs sleep. So, being on your technology all the time is definitely not the mode of goodness. It's a distraction actually, and especially the way that the system is set up these days with like giving you like dopamine fixes and just like short attention spans, like this just trashing your consciousness. Like if we're used to like doom scrolling or watching shorts or whatever, and then we're trying to like meditate, it's just mind is so disturbed. The mind is so disturbed. So yeah, decreasing screen time, or like, what are we associating with, mode of goodness? What are we associating with on the screen? What kind of things are we putting in our consciousness? So anyway, like some simple principles, like your sleep hygiene, sleeping nicely, being in nature, the forest, nature walks is very much mode of goodness. Vegetarian food, sattvic food, or doing austerities, cold plunges, or like, hot and cold exposure, or like, exercise, especially yoga is very sattvic, but exercise like depends on your consciousness. So exercise is good as a principle to have a healthy body. But for example, if you're doing exercise, like going to the gym so that you can like have a sexy body so that you can attract the opposite sex, then you're not in the mode of goodness anymore. You already missed the point. You know what I mean? You should have like a healthy body so that you can have a comfortable situation to expand your consciousness. If you have a healthy body so that you can increase your sex life, then you've missed the mode of goodness. Now you're in passion and ignorance. So yeah. And I think just you can think of a now, just in your 10 seconds while I jump to the next point, just think of like one, like maybe even toxic habit that you have, one thing that you want to release, and then one sacred routine you would want to begin. You can just, in your meditation, just like, man, what's one thing I really want to give it up? Well, that's easy. I definitely want to give that up. All right, well then, okay, I want to give this up. Now, what's one thing I can do, like a positive? Like, we don't want to focus on the negative. Like, I don't want to do this. Okay, fine. You don't want to do this, good. But what is the positive alternative? You know what I mean? They may not even be connected. It's just, what's one thing I want to give it up? I want to release myself from this. And what's one positive thing I can do? And there's a little quote: your daily habits are offerings to your future self. Choose them with intention. Invest in your future self. Well, just because we're on the mode of goodness, like actually worrying about the future is considered to be Rajagun. But from a sattvic place, it means passion. Like, oh, if you're worrying about the future, it's kind of like, oh, what's gonna happen? It's just a dream, it didn't happen yet. The present is the mode of goodness. But still, we should live now in the present, understanding that I'm trying to help my future self. Why not? So I know the time is a little bit going, so there's two more points left. One is seeking wisdom, the inner wisdom ritual, and then the last one is sadhu sangha, the community ritual. So I'll just kind of blast through them, and then we'll see if you guys want to have any discussion. So seeking wisdom, the inner wisdom ritual is like feed your consciousness in a similar way how you feed your body. So the traditional practice would be like listening to sacred texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, classic wisdom text. Just, I really appreciate the book. I don't think it's a simple book. I think it's quite complicated, and there's a lot of different things in there, but there's a lot of wisdom that I think of at least one verse from the Gita every day. Just somehow in my life, the wisdom comes. But in this modern world, there's so much information available. So there's one famous politician. He's not really a politician. He's more of a moralist and philosopher, but he was like kind of like a prime minister. His name is Chanakya Pandit. So I don't know much about him personally, but he said a very interesting thing. He said, we should take wisdom even from the mouth of a fool. And that's something that I meditate on sometimes. Or we should take gold even from a filthy place. Like he has these kind of these whatever aphorisms, I don't know what you call them, these little quotes, wisdom from the mouth of a fool, or gold even from a filthy place. Because this is true, actually. So the only reason I bring it up is because in this modern age, we have so much access to information. Like there's stuff about psychology, there's things about, like addictions, habits, Dr. Huberman or whatever, like podcasts, um, all of which can give us wisdom. So I remember I wrote an article a couple of years ago for this online project. It was called Burger King Spirituality. It was kind of a critique about how, if you have like a menu at a restaurant and then it's like a spiritual menu, like, okay, I like this, but I don't like this. I like this, that I don't like this. And you just like kind of pick and choose whatever things that you want. So I would say there is a kind of danger. It's not the right word, but like I'm not advocating necessarily for you to go and just like cherry pick. There, and this leads into the next point of sadhusanga. There is a utility in like seeing how like saintly people, people with like an elevated consciousness, like walked the path before us. The prophets and saints of these worlds like got to a certain stage in their relationship with divinity and their relationship with the world, and then shared that wisdom. There's a utility in following in that path because it's kind of like tried and tested in one sense. But like I said, this principle, like take wisdom even from the mouth of a fool. Like if we kind of have a goal, spiritual goal, we may want to be peaceful, we want to expand consciousness, we want to experience divinity, like whatever. Then with that kind of focus in mind, then we can take wisdom from other places, we can kind of absorb information that helps us go towards that goal of expanding consciousness or whatever. Like in my subjective experience, I see no danger in like listening from, this source or that source if that information is helping me in my ultimate goal. But yeah, obviously there's some devils in the details. We like to say that it can get confusing. One person teaching this, one person teaching this, or even like I was talking about Bhagavad Gita, there's this translation, that translation. So it can get confusing, and that's why it's good to have association of like-minded people who inspire you, or you see like, oh, this person is like practicing this, and that seems really cool, and I also want to learn, and then you kind of go in that direction. There's some utility there. I'm not saying you have to go and get this guru, that guru, whatever. The only reason I brought it up was because, yeah, I just don't want people to be like bewildered by the over information. You know what I mean? But there are podcasts, and then there's other like studying scripture. I really like it. I find it very helpful. Um, but there's other things like journaling. So, I know there's a lot of science about it, and it's kind of a big thing in the world now, journaling. But like the point is like inner wisdom, like getting things out and reflecting. So I really believe in journaling, although I can't sit here and tell you to do it because I myself am not very strict with journaling, but I do like to study and take notes, which is similar, like just, being connected with the pen and the paper, or even, sometimes I also type, but these days I like to write. And just like getting stuff out and reflecting and then going back and looking, I find it very helpful. Um, and I think for stress, it's really good to, the way you form the letters on the pen, on the paper can also be like a meditation. It's just kind of a nice exchange. So seek wisdom, inner wisdom, but we take help from external, ancient wisdom texts or people who have like really studied things very deeply that's relevant to us, or they're on the spiritual path and they're giving some wisdom. Yeah, I think it's nice to do that. And just to try to finish the last point, and of course they're all connected, about sadhusanga, the association of the saintly people, the community ritual, we like to call it. And like two principles that really stand out for me in my spiritual life. One is community and one is connection. These two C's, community and connection. I think it's kind of the foundation of my existence, at least presently, which means like feeling community, like being a part of a tribe and feeling supported and nourished and all these things, and feeling connected to that tribe, connected to the land, to the planet, to the humans, but also connected to divinity. And this will come, you don't need to do it alone. You can find your like tribe. But with me personally, I feel like it took many, many, many years to feel the kind of level of connection that I do now. But doing things alone is very difficult. Doing things alone is very hard, and together we're very strong. And then also we can find people who, especially when it comes to finding like association, I found, and this also coming from like bhakti wisdom, but the most effective association that I found is when it's someone who's kind of like, I don't know how to say, like more advanced on the spiritual path in terms of like their realization, their connection, their consciousness is more expanded. Someone who's like a little bit further along the path, who have a similar mood, like, you know, you kind of get along, even though they may be like spiritually advanced or not, but you kind of get along, which I think is really important. And then, like I was saying before, they don't want to exploit you. They don't want to take nothing from you. They don't want your money. They don't want anything. They just simply care about you as a being, you know. So if we can try to seek out that kind of association, it's very helpful for us. But then we can also come together as a with like our peers, you know. We don't need to always hang out with like the saints, you know. We also have like our same level people. And then there's also a point about giving mercy to, like, being compassionate to people who are kind of like not haven't come as far as you have, you know, materially or spiritually. Like just being compassionate to people who don't have the same realizations and don't have the same experience that you do. So there's actually three things there. It's, you know, being compassionate to like people who are junior or whatever, less experienced, you know, finding the association of like-minded people that are kind of the same as you, so you can have that friendship and community and nourish each other. And then also seeking higher association, where like just being in the presence of these people, it makes you want to be better. You feel more inspired, you feel more elevated, your consciousness expand more just by being in their presence. So I will finish on that point. But it's a really important one. Like if you want to learn to be a drunkard, you go hang out with the drunkards. If you want to learn how to be a thief, go hang out with the thieves. And if you want to become a saint or a yogi, go hang out with the saints and the yogis. And you'll find like the world is like a mirror. You know, what you put out, it comes back, but also the people that you associate with is also a reflection of you in one sense. So that's the presentation I wanted to show to you guys. There's a lot of information there, but I think if you kind of boil it down to just principles, it can be very relevant. You know, these five principles: Dambas, you know, living in a holy place or making a holy place where you are with your consciousness. Sankirtan, which means, you know, the congregational chanting, mantra healing, sound as medicine, vibrating mantras, but also means yoga, being like yoga, meditation, pranayam, japa, kirtan. All these fit under the Sankirtan principle. Then sattva, being in the mode of goodness, you know, having good lifestyle decisions, your foods, your habits, even your association, the places you go, all this stuff. Wisdom, inner wisdom, you know, journaling, feeding the mind, studying scripture, all these things. And then finally, sadhu sangha, the people that you associate with. Which anyway, I think all these principles to some degree, because you're all here attending these programs regularly, somehow you're either doing one or two or all of them anyway already. And now we can just refine and improve. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening to me. And if anybody wanna add something, say something, you're most welcome. Otherwise, you all are free to go to bed.
Hare Krishna Urugaya.
Who is speaking?
This is Niharika. I just wanted to tell you that this was
Oh,
an
hey.
absolutely inspiring talk. I just love the simplicity with which you broke down these big principles for us, and it's so everyday, it's so actionable. And I personally resonate a lot with the mode of passion that you spoke about. So listening to you was just so refreshing for me, because just that style of conversational way of talking is just like much more resonating than hearing a much more elevated guru speaking. So yeah, thanks again. This was fabulous.
You're saying I'm not an elevated guru? How rude.
No, 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 no.
No,
Saying
no, I'm
that
kidding.
you
I'm kidding. I'm
just
kidding.
resonate so hard that it's
Mhm.
just, it feels like it's accessible versus being like
It
something that
is.
I would
It's
have to
very
probably have
practical.
like 3 lifetimes at least to get to. So yeah, that's
This thing it's like a constant meditation of mine. Like sometimes I get to the end of the day, like, did I do Panchanga Bhakti today? Like, I mean, it's kind of easy. Anyway, they're good principles which we can think about, and it'll definitely help in your life. It's so we should take
for
advantage.
sure.
But when I was speaking, I was like, man, maybe I should just instead of doing five, you can probably just focus on one. But anyway,
But yeah,
yeah.
thanks
But
again. It was a beautiful
thank
talk.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
I concur with everything Niharika said. And thanks, Niharika, for posting like such like kind messages. Like we love having you here, and thank you, Urugaya, for being here. A point that stood out to me today was creating a clean and sanctified place for your practice. And I've been thinking about this more because I'm naturally a very messy person, and it takes me an extra effort to clean up my place, which I do, but having that sanctified place where you can come back to just for practice or if you're reading some kind of wisdom sounds really exciting. And I think we could go a long way to try to like use our creative minds to do this, like maybe hang some pictures that inspire me or putting some quotes up or even having like a nice comfortable chair. uh Not that I can sleep in when I'm gonna meditate, but something not too comfortable but comfortable, having that place. And then also how you said that in Tamvas, like a holy place, like if you associate with people that have that energy, then you are able to associate um with that, and you don't need to be in a holy place all the time to be in contact with that vibration. So I really appreciated those 2 points. Yeah. Graham, did you have anything to add?
I was just interested in that word sattva because in the Buddhist tradition, bodhisattva is one who gives up enlightenment for the sake of others, more or less sacrificing his own. I'm not going to say pleasure because pleasure makes me think of earthly and sensual pleasures. This is more spiritual, but it was just interesting just hearing that word. I've heard the other. That was my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I remember also this bodhisattva. It's a nice principle how they like sacrificing themselves for the benefit of others. And I think this is a really nice principle for life. And something that I also try to imbibe is like it's kind of like a life hack. Because actually just to worry about ourselves and focus on ourselves, it's just like a rabbit hole of like never ending, like whatever, like good and bad all mixed together. But then if you kind of sacrifice yourself for the benefit of others, you know, give pleasure to others, give happiness to others. And that doesn't mean you go and get yourself exploited because there's always a class of people who are very selfish and nasty. That's not what we mean. We're more interested in like the innocent people, nice people. But I just found that as a principle to sacrifice yourself for others, like to share and try to give compassion and be kind is actually a, a way to find peace within oneself. And that's part of the reason why we also do this program where we give out free meals in the village. Like sometimes I'm stressed, I'm like worried about whatever, like money or some drama or whatever, like just not happy because the chemicals in my brain aren't braining properly. I go and make this service, I spend a couple hours cooking big, put it on the truck, and then go to this village, and it's so beautiful. Everything's green, and you see how these people live. Like, damn, people live like this. What the hell? Like, it's just different universe, night and day compared to where I'm from. Probably where you guys are from. But then, I go and make this service, I'm serving and they're kind of happy and it's like a little bit festival mood and they see, these random foreign people come in their village who doesn't usually happen. And then you're giving them like food with like good ingredients, like, and cooked with like good mood, and it's like a festival, and they're so happy. And then after this, I go home, clean up, pack up kitchen, and I'm just like feeling super chill, like just did my thing for the day, just like yes, like. And before I was feeling anxiety, and now I'm feeling good. And it's like this principle, like saying this bodhisattva principle, like, kind of sacrificing you and your energies to like give, like to serve humans, or even whatever, go serve trees, go pick up trash, do service, sacrifice, do service, does something amazing to the consciousness. So it's also, I didn't put it in the presentation, but it's also nice, like to live for the benefit of others as a principle is also a way that you feel very elevated and satisfied within yourself. Not that you go and get exploited, give money to people, whatever, like that's not what I'm saying, but just as a principle, the devil's in the detail, but as a principle, to live for the benefit of others. That's actually the Sankirtan spirit, like to come together and then like, give your energy like for the group, for the benefit of the group, and everyone does it as a culture, as a principle, then all of a sudden everyone's serving everyone, and together you just can elevate your consciousness. So easier said than done, but it's just a nice point. So thank you. Nice to see you again. So yeah, you're all very wonderful, and thank you for tolerating me. And I hope that you took some inspiration and that you can meditate on this Panch Angas and try to implement it in your life. And I am confident that you'll tangibly experience shifting consciousness. Externally, your world will change, and internally, your world will change.
Mhm. Thank you, Urugaya. Oh, Carolina, nice to have your son. Hello. Um, Thank you everyone for joining Wisdom Wednesdays. Time is the most valuable asset, and you give us that every week. So thank you, and thank you, Urugaya, for your time. This was an absolutely phenomenal talk. Like, can't even express it. Such a power-packed session. So many points to know and meditate on. And so many practical tips to take home. And I know everyone feels the same way. They're expressing their gratitude on the chat and with hearts. So we can't wait to have you back so soon. And for anyone who is in the Seattle area, we do have some events coming up at the Bhakti Studio and would love to see you. I'm going to send our Eventbrite events page. Please do come if you are around and if any of these interest you. We have an outdoor kirtan at the Gasworks Park tomorrow. And then we also have an amazing flower festival coming up, an Ayurvedic cooking workshop, and so many amazing things. So if they interest you, please do join us. Um, and otherwise, we'll see you all on Wisdom Wednesdays next week. Thank you, everyone.